From 1995 to 2003, a specter haunted Spartanburg, South Carolina. An unknown attacker raped or attempted to rape 13 girls and women that we know of before vanishing without a trace. For 16 years, this was a cold case. But then investigators got some help from an unexpected place: county librarian. My name is Ted Clifford. I'm a reporter of the state newspaper, and among other things, I cover crime and public safety all across South Carolina. Charity Rouse, the director of local history at the Spartanburg Public Library, is about as far from a detective as you can get. But she proved to be the key player in landing the rapist behind bars. Rouse's specialty is as a genealogist, and she was brought on to see if she could help use a relatively new technique known as genetic genealogy to identify the Spartanburg rapist. Law enforcement had collected DNA from the scene of 6 separate attacks, but it never matched any of their suspects or anyone in national law enforcement databases. So what Rouse and law enforcement did is take the unknown sample and upload it to a commercially available database where users from all over the country had uploaded their own at-home DNA test kits. Using these databases, investigators were able to identify an individual who was a second cousin with the attacker, which meant that their family lines split off at the level of great-grandparent. Rouse then worked backwards, using old-fashioned genealogical techniques like combing obituaries, newspaper clippings, and graduation announcements to build out a huge family tree that would lead to the attacker. As Rouse explained, this is the inverse of what genealogists normally do. Instead of starting from a known person and building out to find relatives and ancestors, you had an unknown person, and you're starting with the relatives and trying to get closer and closer to the suspect. And along the way, investigators from the Spartanburg Police Department and Sheriff's Office would gather DNA samples from possible relatives to see if they were getting closer or further from the suspect. And after just 6 months, they had their man, Gregory Fry. Not only did Fry match a composite sketch drawn of the rapist by one of his survivors, but he also lived in the same apartment building as one of the victims, and his DNA was a match. Fry pleaded not guilty, but at trial in June 2024, a jury took just 2 hours to sentence him to life in prison. And while privacy advocates have raised concerns about genetic genealogy, and some states and companies have tried to limit how law enforcement can access this information, this law enforcement tool is increasingly being used successfully to solve some of the most serious cold cases and bring justice even decades after a crime. For more stories on crime in South Carolina, follow our coverage at thestate.com.